Okay, the first thing we need to do, and I've already completed, I have printed the Tessa dress as well as the A-line skirt that we're going to be using for today's demonstration of this hack. As you can see, I've used these patterns a couple times. I've made this dress for my mom, I think 3 or 4 times now. It fits nice, and just by swapping out the skirt, you can get a totally new dress. So the Tessa dress, as it comes from Love Notions, this is the shape, which is a little more straight than we're going for today. So it's super simple to change the entire skirt portion of this dress. And I am making a dress. I'm going to make probably the midi length, which is the longer option. So in order to do that, I have printed the Tessa dress and assembled, and the A-line skirt from the Sybil collection. There's actually 7 different skirts in this collection, and with just tiny adjustments, you can make them all work with the Tessa in order to make a dress. So, to get started, this is, you can see I've taped it before. This is our Sybil skirt, and from experience I know that the waist on the Tessa dress is only maybe a ½ inch more narrow than the Sybil skirt. So all I did was fold that over just about a half inch or so. And for the sake of the camera, I've marked on this pattern where the waistline is, which is actually already marked on the Tessa dress, which I think is kind of awesome. I wish more patterns did that. So we're going to take our A-line skirt and line up. This is the center of the back bodice, and instead of adding a seam, we're going to go ahead and cut this on the fold, which is the same as the skirt. So we want to line up the top of the skirt with approximately the waistband, or the waistline, I'm sorry, of the dress, and we want to keep this edge straight down the fold. So as you can see, they're really close to fitting. Again, I just have that ½ inch tucked under. And if you would like, you can place just a little piece of tape to hold them together while cutting. That's what I do. Kind of just makes it easier, and it peels right off. And that's all you have to do to turn the Tessa dress into more of an A-line skirt option on that dress. You'll do the same thing. This is the back, but you'll also do the exact same thing after you cut the back out. You can tape that same skirt right to the waistline of the front dress and then cut that as well. And that'll give you your 2 dress pieces with the wider skirt. So I'm going to go ahead and cut those out, and we'll be back. I just want to show you this spot really quick on the pattern, because the back bodice of the Tessa dress is it's cut as 2 pieces, mirrored image, so you have a seam down the back. But with this particular dress, I'm going to eliminate that seam and cut it on the fold, so you can see a little bit of my fabric right here, and this is the shaping that's naturally in the pattern. So the important thing to do is to line up the back. This is where the yoke attaches. So that back point, and then I try to get the skirt on the fabric without adding a ton of room right here. So right now we're adding about 1 inch of fabric in the back. So if you just kind of scooch it over a little bit, it won't add as much. And down here at the full A-line portion of the skirt, you're not going to miss 1 inch of fabric. So I just wanted to show you that little adjustment to slide your pattern over just a bit to reduce some of the fabric here. It'll turn out fine either way, but I just want to make you aware that that was going to happen when you cut out your back panel. So now that our Tessa Sybil hack has been cut out, we're ready to go ahead and start assembling. And the first step we need to do is attach the yoke to the front and the back dress bodices. And I've already clipped those, so we'll just get started. This dress comes together super quickly, which is why I like it. I'm making this one for my mom, for Mama Mia, because she really likes this pattern. And it's easy and it fits her well. So I like to make it for her. And as always, you just adjust as you go. Even though you pinned or clipped or whatever you've done, your fabric will still move a little bit. Okay, so that's both yokes sewn on. I'm going to clip the chain in between them. And now we're going to put our shoulder seams together. And while I was sewing, you could see that I have white thread in my loopers because the back of my fabric is actually white. And then I put black thread in my bead needle, which is my outside, which is the one that if my tension would get a little bit weird and the dress would maybe be stretched or whatever while you're wearing it, you wouldn't see white thread sticking through. So I always try to match my outside needle thread with the color of the outside of the garment. So those are our shoulder seams clipped together, so we're ready to sew those. And again, it's going to be white in my loopers and my outside needle is black. And if I don't have the right color of thread, I personally have no problem with using like a neutral or a gray. I don't think you can see my thread in this current setup, but I definitely have 4 different shades of thread going on. And it doesn't bother me. I don't sew for business. I sew for mainly myself and my mom, and we're not that picky. So now we have the top of the bodice assembled, or the top of the dress rather. So now the next step, I like to put sleeves in on the flat. I just find that to be a whole lot easier personally. So that's what we'll do next. I used a black scrap that I had in my stash to cut the sleeves as well as both yokes. And I'm considering, this dress calls for like a neck binding, and I usually just make a band because I'm not really great at binding. But I'm going to check my elastic stash and see if I can find some decorative elastic to put around her neckline. I think that'll be something a little different. I recently did that on a dress for myself and I really liked it. So I'm pinning the sleeve corners, or clipping rather, the sleeve corners to the dress bodice corners and the middle. I'm clipping all those in place. And I'm always careful to make sure the seam is pointing down because I'm going to press the seam down. So I like to stitch it in place already facing down. So this went together, right sides together, a few clips, and we're ready to sew. I have both shoulder, both sleeves clipped to the shoulder of the bodice. So we're ready to go ahead and serge those on. Even though I'm using a serger, you can absolutely do this with your regular sewing machine. I would use a zigzag stitch and it will work just fine. And I try to be careful to keep my my seams. I just sewed over the seam for the yoke. I try to keep that pointing down so that when I press it, it will lay nice and flat. So there's one sleeve sewn in. So it's nice and neatly sewn in. And now we're going to do the second sleeve. And again, I like to sew my sleeves in before I do my side seams. I think it's just a lot easier for me if I assemble the sleeve first. I oftentimes will accidentally sew it inside out. I don't know. I'm a mess sometimes. So this just seems to work out a lot better. So that's both of our sleeves sewn in. And now we're ready to sew our side seams. And I always start by matching up the underarm seam. I'm putting a clip there. And then I do the wrist, in which this is a 3/4 sleeve, so it's really the forearm. And then I put a clip in the middle of the sleeve, and then I go down and match up both of my bottom edges. Put a clip there. And now we just need to focus on evenly laying out the dress, matching as we go, and adding a few clips along the way. And I like to go from the top to the bottom, well, back and forth between the top and the bottom. That way I don't end up at the bottom of my dress and have like a 1/2 inch to ease in at the bottom. You kind of know before something is going wrong, I guess. So that was one side, and now here we'll do the other side, starting with the underarm seam. And I like to nest those, meaning one of my serged edges is up and one's down, so they fit together as flat as possible. I think that's a trick I learned during quilting. I was a quilter before I made clothing, and you always wanted to make your seams as flat as possible. So the forearm, now the mid-arm. And you can see how quickly this comes together. Such a fast pattern. Now the bottom edges. And this is an A-line skirt, so it's got kind of a long hem, which is nice. My mom likes twirly, fun, flowy, girly dresses, I guess. She'll be excited. She doesn't know I'm making this. When I finish, I'm going to call her and have her come over. Hopefully come over. If not, I'll throw it on her mannequin. I'm wanting to finish this last minute because I didn't plan on making it, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh, that'd be a good idea. Some people may not realize you can mash patterns so easily, and this is a really good one to start with. So she's going to be excited. She bought this fabric like 2 years ago, I think, at Zinks in Berlin, Ohio, which is kind of like a warehouse, tons of stuff. So now both of my side seams are clipped together, and I'm going to reposition, and we're going to sew these together. So stay tuned. Okay, here we go with sewing our side seams, which is the last big step of the dress. Then we'll just have finishing to go. Now that I'm sewing this, I'm wishing I would have sewn in some pockets. I'm not sure why people make dresses without pockets. I usually think about it like 5 minutes too late. But this would be super easy to put pockets into. You could use any side seam pocket or even trace your hand. I have to remember when I'm making these videos to slow down because my table is really bouncy and my machine shakes like, looks like we're having an earthquake. But if I go slow, it's not as crazy. If you're learning how to serge or how to sew, you'll see how much that I really do adjust my fabric to keep it even. So if you're doing the same thing, you're absolutely on the right track. think the little steps like matching up your fabric or doing top stitching, those are the little things that make your garments look so much nicer and just well made and good quality. Even though they tend to take a few more minutes, it's absolutely worth it. Things like adding pockets to dresses. It's absolutely worth it. Okay, so that finishes off our side seams, which means that we have a dress at this point. Technically, I just need to finish the sleeves, the hem, and the neckline. So let me turn it right sides out. This pattern has a higher neckline, which is my mom's preference. I'm showing you the back. So this is the front, and I know that probably looks terrible on camera right now, but this is the front of her dress. And you can see that I took the time to line up the pattern so that it was nice and even down the front. And those are the things I was talking about. The details really do matter. So I'm going to find some sort of finish for the neckline, and we'll be right back.